Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Depot Dive. I'm Ross McCorkle, and above me here on the screen, as always, is my co-host Joe Clark, and it is Week 1. The NFL will be kicking off the season tonight between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. The Steelers playing in just a few days, which means we have a Week 1 preview to get to. We're going to make our season predictions, which we have posted on the site, but we'll talk about them here as well. And of course, the biggest news topic in Pittsburgh right now, what's going to happen with Cam Heyward. We're going to talk about those three topics today and probably some other things in between. Joe, before we dive in, how are things going on your end?
Going pretty well. How about you?
Pretty good. We had our annual Steelers Depot fantasy football draft yesterday. I can't really remember who I got on my team. We do have somebody who picks only Steelers players, which always throws a massive wrench in the operation.
It was beautiful to have him picking before me on the turn. So
Yes.
I was able to get a few guys that I thought there was no chance I would be able to get when I got them. I think I got like Davon Achane in the fourth round, which I thought was incomprehensible. I'm pretty happy with how my draft went.
Yes. I got Jamar Chase pick 5, which I did not think
Yes.
he'd be there. So, I think a couple of us benefited from David O's Steelers homerism there. But that happens every year. That's how our league goes. We don't take it too seriously. We just have a good time in that league. But anyway, enough of fantasy football. On to the actual football. Cam Heyward, we're going to talk about him first. Is he going to play in Week 1? What's going on with the holdout? Are the Steelers going to sweeten his contract? It's what everybody wants to know. And it seems like everybody is on the same page thinking that he will show up. Mike Tomlin said he expects, I forget the exact, but basically I think he said, I certainly expect Heyward to play Week 1. Terrell Austin, defensive coordinator, also said he expects him to play. I think even a couple teammates, Isaiah Loudermilk a week or two ago, was pretty confident that Heyward would be playing Week 1. And I think Alex Highsmith made some comments today, and I don't know if he necessarily said he'd be playing Week 1, but he says there's really not been that much drama internally about this subject. But on the flip side, Cam Heyward on his podcast still dropping kind of cryptic "we'll see" type of messages when asked if he's going to play Week 1. Seems to still be leaving the door open for a potential holdout. Joe, is it just a bunch of talk from Heyward? Is it a last-ditch effort for leverage, or what's going on?
Yeah, that's the way I see it. I mean, he's made his feelings known before. I think his "will see" on the podcast is basically just his last attempt at, getting it out there publicly that, hey, maybe there's a chance I won't play. But I don't think there's really any actual chance. I have such a minimal concern level about Hayward not playing. I mean, everything his coaches have said, his teammates have said. He's been out there practicing. He was just voted a captain again. I mean, it would be a pretty bad look if he was voted a captain and then he sat out over money. And don't get me wrong, he deserves a pay raise. He deserves more money. But the optics of that, just 6 days after being voted a captain, just wouldn't be great on that end. So yeah, I mean, I just see it as him trying to get his leverage, and I mean, it's not not completely written off. He gets a deal done. I think it was last year he signed on September 3rd, and it was Pat Freiermuth signed the Friday before the team left for Atlanta. Something could still get done here in the next. I guess this afternoon or tomorrow, some sort of contract adjustment. But either way, I think Hayward's going to be out on the field at this point. I mean, he hasn't talked to the media about it, but he did make his feelings known in the past. At this point, I think it's kind of just an issue that, he might just have to take the loss on if it comes down to it. If the team boards the plane on Saturday, there's no new deal.
He's been practicing. He continues to practice. I think we're in alignment here on this topic. I mean, I've been kind of on Heyward's side since the beginning, and I know that's kind of the unpopular take in Pittsburgh right now. A lot of people are upset with him, and I understand that side of things too. I really don't see a huge issue with, giving him some of the money from next year, and then there'll be, only 1 year left on his deal, and then you don't really have to worry about precedent. And I mean, he's going to be 37 next offseason, so it's not like he's going to get some large new contract next offseason unless he goes first team All-Pro. And if that happens, I mean, gosh, he probably deserved that money to begin with. So I think he will play. I keep seeing insider guys like Dan Graziano this morning talking about like, oh, what's going to happen? Adam Schefter saying things could get interesting and kind of saying, I don't know if he's going to play. Of course, these insider guys are mouthpieces for agents, and so as an agent just basically saying, hey, could you please put it back out there that my client is thinking about not playing? That's more likely what happened there with Schefter, in my opinion. But I just don't see what's to gain if we've reached the season and Heyward is holding out. There's just no world where he holds out, because what is there to gain at that point? Is he going to sit out the whole season at 36? I don't think so. I mean, this is a guy who likes his legacy, and like you said, he's a captain. He treats that seriously. Last year, he missed, the first week of OTAs and returned because he was like, well, I am a captain. I need to be here for the team. And so this is a guy who takes that seriously. It wouldn't be a good look. He has nothing to gain. The battle's already lost if we make it to the season and he's holding out. The Steelers aren't going to avoid breaking one precedent to break an even bigger precedent by negotiating in season. So yeah, I just see it as kind of a last-ditch effort by Heyward. And honestly, if you're the Steelers, you really have no reason to give it to him, because, I think you just call his bluff and go into the season. But I kind of wish they would. Just, if anybody deserves good business, it's Heyward. So I don't know. Either way, I wouldn't be very surprised either way. But what I am pretty certain of is he will not be holding out. I don't know if there's a whole lot I don't want to beat that topic to death. I know everybody's been talking about it. Do you have anything else to add there, Joe?
No, I think that all summed it up pretty well. I don't really think there's much more we can get out of it.
All right, we're going to move on to previewing the Week 1 game. The Steelers on the road in New York against the Jets. A little quarterback swap taking place from 2024 to 2025. Justin Fields, who started the first 6 games for the Steelers last year, is now the starting quarterback for the Jets. Aaron Rodgers, who started all 17 for the Jets, is now the starting quarterback for the Steelers. Let's just start there. Do you think that Mike Tomlin kind of downplayed the idea of there being an advantage in that, because both teams kind of have the same situation going on where, yeah, their defense knows Aaron Rodgers, our defense, or the Steelers' defense rather, knows Justin Fields, and so do you kind of buy that there's really no advantage there? It's more of a push, or do you think that maybe there is an advantage that Mike Tomlin just wasn't acknowledging?
I think there's, some sort of an advantage on the Jets side, just when you look at the fact that one thing that Aaron Rodgers has done so well throughout his career is his cadence and, drawing guys off sides, and something that, is an advantage to him as a quarterback. And, the Jets defense having practice against him last year, it's something that there might be a little bit more used to than if the Steelers are playing, let's say, I don't know, the Bengals or the Falcons week 1, a team that, that maybe they've seen it before, but it's not something they practice against as often as the Jets did last year. So just from that, minor perspective, there's probably a little bit of advantage, just because it's something that Rodgers does at such a high level. It's really one of his strengths, his ability to draw people off sides and you kind of play with the defense's head. Still, I don't think it's, gonna negate, it's not gonna be completely negated, but the Jets are gonna just be a little bit more familiar with it. But really, that's the only thing I could see that is an advantage in any team side. It's more or less a push. I don't think any team has, insider knowledge or whatever. And you could say the same. The Steelers defense practiced against Fields last year a lot, especially in training camp, and they see how he can use his legs. So it's all basically just a push at the end of the day. But there's there are a few minor things that, or if there's a different opponent, that it might be more of an advantage for the offense or the defense. But I don't really see this one being huge in one way or the other.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is that the Steelers have most of this, the same coaching staff in place. So your Arthur Smith and Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin are more familiar with a Justin Fields than Steve Wilks or Jeff Ulbrich or sorry, not Jeff Ulbrich, Steve Wilks or Tanner Engstrand would be with Aaron Rodgers, because they weren't actually on his team last year. Certainly, I think that Aaron Glenn is plenty familiar with him, just being in the NFC North for a few years there and playing him a couple times. I don't know how many years was Glenn there? Is there in Detroit?
Good question.
But anyways, I think that, the people are going to make up or kind of play up the idea of a advantage. I don't know that there really is one, and Aaron Rodgers hasn't been giving the media any bait, or taking the bait rather, when they bring that up. I think he just said it's week 1 and pretty much left it at that. He did make sure to point out kind of like a pop quiz of Jets defensive players and former teammates, and he listed off like 10 of them, and so I guess that's kind of a tip of the cap. Like, hey, yeah, I do know these guys. Whatever, but. What else in this game? I think the X factor, we have a roundtable coming out in a couple of days here. I think it's on Saturday morning with several of our contributors kind of saying our X factors, one of the top matchups to watch. Joe, who did you have for that stuff?
Yep, so my X factor, I haven't put any up, but I'm going to go with Pat Fryermuth. I think it's kind of a big game for him. I mean, there's questions about who's going to step up at receiver behind DK Metcalf. Sauce Gardner, if he plays, he was listed as limited on the estimate injury report yesterday. I don't think it's anything serious, but assuming that he does play, he'll be matched up on DK Metcalf. Might need to, get somebody else involved there on the offense, and I think it's a good opportunity for Fryermuth. So I think he could really be an X factor in this matchup. And then for a matchup to watch, I had Sauce Gardner against DK Metcalf just because whoever gets the better of that matchup. I mean, like I said, there's questions beyond Metcalf within the Steelers pass catchers, so it'll be a test. We've heard so much about Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin III, and all this praise, so it'll be a test for those guys, and it'll also be a test for Fryermuth, who I think could really have a big year with Aaron Rodgers and wants to work over the middle of the field. So I'm excited to see what he can do on Sunday. So I think big day for Pat Fryermuth.
Yeah, I think my X factor is probably going to end up being Y.A. Black. I haven't written my thoughts down yet, but Elijah Vera Tucker is out for the season with a torn tricep, which likely means that they're going to be putting Joe Tippmann, typically a center, in at right guard. He's played, 200 career snaps or something like that, 199 at right guard in his career. That all came his rookie season a couple years ago. And so, Y.A. Black has a chance to kind of exploit that. And I think we all are excited to see Y.A. Black after the stellar preseason that he had, and now he's going against, Vera Tucker is probably their best offensive lineman. He was voted a captain, for one, and so just kind of playing against a little bit of inexperience. Of course, Black is inexperienced himself, but kind of now a level playing field, if you will, in that regard. And I think over there at right tackle, they have a rookie, and that's kind of a big talking point as well. TJ Watt versus Armand Membo. I think this is a guy who many thought would maybe be one of those in-between offensive linemen in this draft. It's like he definitely has the skills and the tape to play tackle, but his size and his arm length kind of more suggested, okay, maybe is this guy going to be a guard? And so, they have him at tackle. I think that's his right position. It's the correct position for him because he was dominant. Where was he? At Mizzou?
Yep.
And so Watt is now going to be going against a rookie, and that rookie does not have a familiar face next to him, which is an important thing. These, especially for rookies in their first game, they're going to be leaning on the guy next to them, making sure that they're, in the right checks and the right protection, sliding the right way. And, if they need to kind of hand off, if Watt's twisting inside, there's just kind of operationally handing off blocks from one person to another. All that kind of stuff's going to play a factor. And so that's probably my top matchup to watch out there at right tackle and with TJ Watt. And we'll see how much TJ Watt ends up moving around, because that was one of the big stories of the end of last year and throughout this offseason, is how much is Watt going to move around. I don't think anyone really knows the question. It seems like, or the answer to that question. I think it seems like they moved him around in camp, but we don't really have a ton to go off of. And they've experimented with that in the past and ended up not moving him around a bunch. So I think we're all eager to see how that plays out. I wanted to discuss something from ESPN's Dan Graziano, where in his ESPN Buzz file this morning, he highlighted the Steelers and the Jets matchup and basically said if the offensive coordinators had it their way, this game would be over in 2.5 hours because they'd be running the ball basically every play. And Steelers fans aren't going to want to hear this, and I don't know maybe how accurate Graziano even is here, because we'll talk about what Arthur Smith said earlier today in a second, but he's saying that he expects kind of a conservative game plan from Arthur Smith, meaning they're going to run the ball a lot. They're going to try and limit kind of the situations that Aaron Rodgers has put in, since he hasn't been in the preseason that much. He didn't play in the preseason at all and just kind of isn't experienced with this offense yet. And so, Joe, if they end up doing this conservative approach like last year, 18-10 against the Falcons, I think they ran think they ran almost 40 times and they passed like 30 times or something like that. Pretty lopsided in terms of the run-pass split. Didn't target the middle of the field at all. Would that be a huge disappointment in week one, or should we expect that? Because, the offense kind of needs to get its feet underneath them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a little bit of a bummer to not see Aaron Rodgers come out and, do what you want to see him do, but I wouldn't be too concerned about it. I wouldn't be worried about it. I mean, we saw last year earlier in the season, I think pretty much every team across the board was just super conservative with how they ran their offense. And with Rodgers not having that in-stadium experience with the Steelers, it wouldn't be super surprising, I think, if, they leaned a little bit more on the run. And I do think the run game was kind of one of the biggest disappointments coming out of training camp. So if the run game ends up, looking good, then I think, hey, then we should be excited about that because you kind of have a run game. And if you have Rodgers playing, getting into the rhythm mid-season, and then you have an active, successful run game complementing Aaron Rodgers, that would be, obviously a very big positive. So I wouldn't be too concerned. I mean, it would just be disappointing to not, see Rodgers go out and sling it and kind of do what he was brought here to do. But I wouldn't necessarily be upset if that was the approach, especially, I mean, obviously if they win, a win's a win. But I think a conservative approach probably is more likely than not at this point.
Yeah, let me pull up the Steelers and Falcons from last year because I believe the receivers. Okay, so receiving, you had George Pickens, 6 receptions, 85 yards, and then you had Pat Freiermuth, Jalen Moore, Michael Pruitt, Najee Harris, Calvin Austin III, Darnell Washington, and Van Jefferson combined for, what is that, like 10 receptions for like 50 yards between 6 of them. So the passing game in general only had 156 yards in that game. So I mean, let me set the stage. This offseason, we've heard about Roman Wilson, especially as of late, people talking about, wow, we haven't heard so much good stuff, from inside that building about a player in a long time. And we heard a lot of the same things about Calvin Austin, the tight ends. Aaron Rodgers just called it the best tight end room he's ever been around in 21 years in his career. Darnell Washington getting all this hype. And then they come out and they only give that collection of players, the non-DK Metcalf players, about 50 receiving yards. I think the Steelers fan base might revolt if that happens, but I kind of am leaning that direction, at least for week one. However, Arthur Smith today talked to the media and basically said, I think he was asked about using the middle of the field more, and he said, this year's going to be different. Kind of highlighted how last year they had Russell Wilson, who was an outside the numbers passing deep threat kind of guy, and they had George Pickens, who that was also his specialty, and so he molded his offense to kind of what his team was good at. And this year it seems like they're good at other things. So I'm kind of split in between what Arthur Smith is saying there and wanting to believe him, but also just kind of maybe the Steelers are going to play it safe week one, and Mike Tomlin has his way that he likes to engineer victory, as he likes to say, and kind of what's the greater force between the two. So, any thoughts there, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I really have no qualms about them running the football early on. And if Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin do get off to a slow start, I'm not going to worry about them for the rest of the season. I mean, I still think there's a lot of potential there. I mean, we saw Calvin Austin. He wasn't a big contributor week one last year, and he really ended up kind of having a little bit of a breakout year. So I'm not going to, I do agree that the fan base might revolt if that's the case week one. I mean, it's not going to be pretty, but again, engineering victory, a win's a win. The Jets have a strong defense. They have, pretty talented secondary. So if they're running the football a lot, then if it's getting them yards and it's getting them a win, and it's a win. I mean, they're going to tailor their game plan week to week. That's what, when Arthur Smith was hired last year, that was the biggest praise from evaluators around the league, is how he tailors his game plan to each individual opponent. So I wouldn't personally, be super upset about it, but I do agree with all that we've heard from all these receivers, that if it was a pretty tepid debut, it wouldn't be a very happy city of Pittsburgh, unless, I mean, a win will make people happy, but there will still be questions raised about this passing attack until we really see Roman Wilson or Calvin Austin or whoever really kind of take that jump.
I think, at least among the fan base, a win is expected. I think that they'd have to win decisively for anybody to be happy, but we will see. I guess that theory will be put to the test in a few days. Joe, do you have a score prediction for this game?
I am going to go with, I think I had something like 23 to or 24 to 16 Steelers or 20. So I think 24 to 16 was what I settled on yesterday. I was going through it in my head.
Oh, let me make sure I have my exact one here since I did write it down. 21 to 17 is what I had for the Steelers. I think there's going to be a little bit of rust. I think we're going to see some, offense stalling out, a few 3-and-outs early in the game, maybe some second half heroics, maybe a touchdown, Darnell Washington in there to put them over the top, 21-17. We both have them starting 1-0, which segues us to our season predictions. Well, like I said, we submitted our Steelers Depot season predictions from the staff. You can check that out on the site from a couple days ago. And we had two kind of different routes for the Steelers season. I think last year we both had them winning their first playoff game in a while. They obviously made both of us wrong with a loss. This year, I have them winning not one, but two playoff games, and you unfortunately see them petering out in the playoffs once again. Joe, walk me through your thought process. Why are the Steelers not going to get over the hump? And talk about your 10-7 record prediction.
Yeah, at this point, I just kind of I have to see it before I can really, truly deep down believe it. I mean, I'm an optimist at the start of the season. I think they're going to be a very good football team, but I mean, we've seen them have very good football teams and go in and lose a playoff game. So I just can't predict them to win a playoff game at this point until it actually happens, until I see it happen, which is maybe a defeatist attitude to have, but it's just been, last season you had so much hype at 10-3 and they go and fall flat late in the season. 2 years ago, I don't think anybody expected much of anything after the suck into the playoffs, but you go back to the way back to the Jaguars year, you go back to the year they lost to the Browns. Both those games you come in, they have teams that, both games that they really should win, and they just haven't won. And the AFC is just completely loaded this season. There's a lot of young teams, there's a lot of, talented quarterback play. How is the Steelers going to hold up with, an older defense? I'm not as concerned about, the age factor. Some people are making out them being the second oldest team in the league to be, a more of a negative than I think it really kind of is, because I think it lends you plenty of experience. And I think, you still have guys like TJ Watt and Cam Heyward who are going to be super hungry to win those playoff games. But I just couldn't predict it until I see it. 10-7. I think they're probably going to go 4-2 in the division. They have a tough back half of the schedule, but I think they're going to win enough games to get to 10 wins. It might be a little dicey here and there at some points of the season, but I do think there's more than enough talent in this team to get to 10 wins. I almost went with 11, but I'll stick with 10. But I do think 11 is a possibility. 12. I saw what you put out there, and I think there's a very feasible path to get to 12 as well. So I hope I'm wrong with the 10-7 and no playoff wins, certainly, but I just can't pick it until I see them actually go out and prove that they can win a playoff game for the first time in nearly a decade.
Yeah, and Ben Roethlisberger, I think, ended up at 11-6 with his prediction there, and so kind of splitting the difference between us. It seems like a lot of people are predicting kind of between the 10-7 and 12-5 kind of being the upper bound, so I am on the optimistic side of things for sure. There's a handful of games that I have circled that could really go either way, and I think some of them will surprise people. I think the Patriots one is unfortunately one that could surprise some people. That one's in New England. The Steelers, I mean, I know it's not the Belichick, Brady era, but Steelers have had some bad games there over the years. Didn't they lose to Mac Jones? I mean,
They did indeed lose to Mac Jones. Who it was? Nelson Aguilar, Most. I forget who the cornerback was, but Nelson Aguilar just had the most ridiculous play at the end of the half to Moss. I think
Steven
it might have been
Nelson or
Steven
something.
Nelson. Yes, I think it was Steven Nelson. That was the most frustrating play ever because I was just not a good Patriots team. And
Did Bailey Zappi also beat them? Was that
who?
Did Bailey Zappi also beat them?
Yeah,
at one
Bailey
point?
Zappi beat them on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah.
During they were in that stretch where they lost to the Cardinals and they had that 3-game losing streak. That was when Kenny Pickett was there. Mitch Trubisky started that game.
Right.
I think Juju Smith-Schuster had half of his Patriots receiving yards in that one game alone. Yeah, ugly, ugly, ugly.
And you don't hear the end of that because you're up in
Oh,
Boston.
never.
Even when, yeah, that's rough. But I think that's one that I definitely have circled that, these are games the Steelers need to win. If they don't, it's really a bad sign, especially that being week 3. It's a bad omen for the season if they start to drop games like that. Although Anyone watching the Steelers for any length of time knows that they do drop at least one of those kind of games every season. Last year was kind of, I guess, the Browns were one of those. The Cowboys without Prescott was one of those. I mean, there was a couple. The Colts, yeah, there was a couple bad ones last year, for sure. And so, inevitably, there'll probably be a couple bad ones in here. But I guess with my 12-5 prediction, I'm betting on very few of those, if any. So, the ones that I had the Steelers losing in my full predictions was the Vikings, the first Bengals game, which is on a short week going into Thursday Night Football after playing the Browns. And so back-to-back divisions going into a short week, that's kind of rough. Kind of see a loss there. I have the Steelers losing to the Chargers. I kind of think that last year it was a low-scoring affair. I think the Chargers are finally poised to kind of make that jump that everyone's been predicting for a few years now. I have them losing one of the Ravens games, the one in Baltimore. And then I have them losing to the Lions in a physical game up there in Detroit. Those are my 5. Obviously, I'm optimistic there about the Packers. I think a lot of people have the Packers as maybe a Super Bowl favorite type of team. I'd certainly think of them that way, but I think, there's a lot of meaning to that game with Aaron Rodgers playing the Packers, a chance to become one of the exclusive quarterbacks who has beat, just about all 32 teams. How many? I think there's like 5 or something like that he'd be joining. And so I'm betting on him to make history there. Joe, losing in the playoffs in the first round, is it going to be a matter of, so you're predicting them to get second in the division. So say they get, if they're 10-7, they're probably looking at what, a 5 seed, a 6, or no, not a 5, probably like a 6 seed. 7 if they get really unlucky.
I think I penciled them as like a 6.
And so you're talking about playing probably one of the Ravens, the Bills, or the Chiefs if things go how they have been going and how a lot of people expect them to go, which obviously that could change. But that would be the who you kind of have them playing in the playoffs. And so is that kind of your thought process? Since you don't think they win the division, they're playing one of the top 3 teams, and that's where they're losing that playoff game.
Yep, that's exactly it. Like, I just don't know. The Bills, I think could potentially be beatable. Again, depends how the season goes. We'll see how injuries stack up and all that. The Ravens, again, they see him. They see him twice during the regular season. They should be able to, at least put up a fight against the Ravens, although they didn't last year. Then the Chiefs. The Chiefs have completely dominated the Steelers since they've had Patrick Mahomes. But it would be pretty fitting if their playoff win did come against the Chiefs after their last playoff win was the Alex Smith Chiefs team way back when. So that would be a little bit fitting. But yeah, I have them one of those 3 teams, or even in the AFC West. The Broncos could be a surprise winner there, and I think the Broncos defense, their pass rush. All around, I just think that would pose a lot of problems for the Steelers offense. So I do have them playing one of the top 3 teams, and I just don't know if they'll have the horses to pull it off until I see it. I can't deep down good faith predict them to win.
That is totally fair, and I agree. If they don't win the division, I have a hard time seeing them winning a playoff game. I think they're going to need to win the division, and I think that they have a chance to. Getting to 12 wins, has won the AFC North in, I think it's like 6 of the last 10 years. That's enough to win the AFC North. It would have been enough last year, I believe. So, yeah, getting to 12 wins, which I have kind of outlined their path, would likely get them a home playoff game. And at that point, you'd hope that they win. Another home playoff loss, which hasn't happened in a while, I guess since 2020, would be tough to stomach for sure with this team. Now, we did some prop bets as well. Rodgers over 3,900. We both went over. I think we talked about that with our stat predictions a while back. It's just really hard to kind of do the math and who's going to kind of get the short end of the stick with their production if he goes under 3,900, especially with all these weapons, all these mouths to feed. Any flavor to add there, Joe?
No, I completely agree. That was what was going through my head when I went over, because I just have a hard time finding where they go under unless they become a really really run heavy team. And DK Metcalf goes under 850 or 900 yards this season, and I can't find a good way for the Rodgers to go under 3,900 yards.
If he goes under 3,900, we're talking about 1 or 2 players who everyone has high hopes for having probably a bad season or getting hurt or something like that. So, but enough people on our team took the under there to be noteworthy. I think Dave and Alex, I think both went under on that. So,
Did.
TJ Watt sacks 15. I toyed with where to set that number. I just kind of set these arbitrarily. Didn't look at Vegas odds or anything like that. But I thought 15 was a good number. He's gone over 15 in 3 of the last 5 seasons. One of those seasons he didn't was, of course, the injured year in 2022. The other one was last year, in which he only had 11.5. Finished the year with, one or 2 sacks over the last 5 or 6 games, including the playoffs. And so, I thought that was an interesting number, and he's only gone over that number 3 times, but he just got paid like he should go over that number, and so we both went over. Joe, what's your thought process there?
Yeah, new contract. He's going to come in motivated this season. I think there's going to be some fearful matchups, especially you look at this week. He's going against a rookie offensive tackle, and he's been a menace week 1 since 2021. He's had a sack every single week 1 game. That could continue. He could get 2 maybe. I wouldn't be surprised. We got 3. Got 3 against the Niners 2 years ago against Colton McKivett. So I think he's going to come out with a bang to start the season, and I think he'll be able to, fairly handily get his way to over 15 throughout the course of the year.
I agree. I think the secondary is going to give him more time to get back there. They're going to be playing a lot of man, which means you're buying him, even if it's an extra 0.2 seconds on average per play. That is turning a good portion of his quarterback hits, a good portion of his pressures into quarterback hits, and a good portion of his quarterback hits into sacks. And so, he certainly had a lot of plays that were close last year where if he did have that extra, split second, he probably gets home. We're probably talking about, if he's getting home that much, pretty healthy forced fumble production. He had 6 last year despite his dip in sacks. And so, I think I expect this to be another Defensive Player of the Year campaign for Watt. Whether or not he wins it obviously depends on a lot, but I think he's capable, and I think he absolutely has a chance at bouncing back in a big way this year. The last one was the number 2 receiver, not named DK Metcalf. We both went Pat Freiermuth. So let me extend that one further. The number 3 receiver, not named DK Metcalf or Pat Freiermuth.
I'll go with Calvin Austin III. We haven't seen a lot of him, obviously, with the injury, but I do think he can, in terms of yardage totals, he can stretch the field, so we'll see a few big plays out of him. Last year, I think his contested catch ability was a lot better here. The one against the Ravens, that was really impressive down the sideline in that second game against them. And that's kind of his catch radius has been one of the bigger knocks against him. But if he can make contested catches more this season, he can make big plays. And then obviously he can work underneath, he can work over the middle. So I could see another, pretty solid campaign out of Calvin Austin III and have him be, the number 3 guy this year.
I think I'm a big Calvin Austin III fan, for the record. I think I've said that all along. But I think I'm bought enough into the hype for Roman Wilson now to kind of put him as that 3rd. And I actually thought about putting him as the 2nd, even over Freiermuth. Among our team, we had 4 different answers for that. And so you have DK Metcalf, as I would assume most people have him as the 1. But then after that, we had Jonnu Smith, Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin, and Pat Freiermuth. Freiermuth led the way. And then I think after him, it was Roman Wilson. So I think 3 people on our team had Roman Wilson as the 2nd leading receiver. And so it seems like people are buying the hype. I'm kind of buying the hype. Joe, is that just cheap talk this time of year, or are you buying the hype?
I'm buying the hype. I do think he'll have it. He was a 3rd-round pick for a reason last year. There's a lot of hype after the draft to him. The injury just kind of derailed a lot of that, and he's looked, pretty solid from what we've seen in the preseason. Or he had a nice end to training camp. So yeah, I'm buying into the hype. I think we could see some nice things from Roman Wilson this year.
Yeah, you hear something from an insider. It was Mark Cabali saying, he's never heard so many team sources rave about a player like they are about Roman Wilson right now. And you hear that and you're like, okay, I was kind of halfway bought into the hype at that point, until John Gruden went on his AFC North preview for the year and was basically discussing, player by player, every player on the Steelers roster. And when he got to the receivers, he said there's no player he's more excited for than Roman Wilson. And he went a step further and kind of cited, hey, Zach Azani's my good friend. And He loves that people are saying this room's, kind of underrated, blah, blah, blah. And so, he's a friend of Zach Azani. He's also hyping up Roman Wilson. It seems like team sources have been hyping up Roman Wilson. Could that be a connection where, okay, John Gruden's hearing that directly from the mouth of Azani? I don't know, but it's feasible. And so I'm absolutely bought into the hype now on Roman Wilson. Wouldn't be surprised at all if he ends up the number 2 receiver on the team. But I think we will have a pretty good idea of that early on in the season, how they're using him, the snap share and all like that's going to be telling. All along, it's been kind of a question of how are you going to get Calvin Austin this many reps if you're getting, Roman Wilson this many reps? Are they going to cannibalize each other? The Steelers like to use 3 tight ends, 4 tight ends. That means less receivers on the field, and so it's all going to come down to kind of how often these guys get on the field. But yeah, Roman Wilson has a chance to become that number 2 receiver. Absolutely. I think that's all we have for the show today. The Steelers will be playing in just a few days. We finally are going to have film to look at, actual football to talk about. It's going to be glorious. We don't have any questions today. If you want to have a question for next show, 412-254-3145. We will be moving the show to Thursdays. Tuesdays are just too busy. You got Mike Tomlin's press conference. There's a chance Aaron Rodgers will be on Pat McAfee.
Quick update on that. Mike Florio said he was not expected to appear on McAfee every Tuesday this year.
This just got announced?
Yes.
Interesting, because he actually said he basically said he's going to defer to the Steelers on that, and so does that stand to reason? I mean, I would assume if the Steelers said go ahead, he'd do it. So that to me says that the Steelers were like, we'd prefer you don't. And so okay, well, interesting there. Tuesdays will be a little less hectic for us, which I can't complain about. I'm pretty happy about that news, honestly. So
I'm thrilled.
All right, I'm sure fans are not, because I'm sure they would love to hear. Well, I don't know. I'm sure that's actually a pretty split decision there. I think some fans just would love to hear anything extra Steelers talk out there on the airwaves. Any Steelers talk they can get, they would love it. And others are a little bit wary of Rodgers going off the rails and saying something that becomes the focus of media attention for the next month, 2 months, the whole season. So understandable there, but it doesn't sound like we're going to have to deal with it. So, all right, that's all for today's show. Again, 412-254-3145. Leave us a voicemail, give us a text, tell us your name, leave us a question for a chance to have your question answered on a future episode. I am Ross. That is Joe. Happy football watching, and we will catch you guys next week.